We have a guest here today.
We do.
Would the man of the hour like to come over here?
Come here. That's your cue.
This is Smokey Bear, aka Mr. Tubby.
You're just a baby. Okay, he said that's it.
He does not like to be touched very much. It is 100% on his own terms, but he's purring. He cannot be that upset.
I'm just gonna squeeze right past you.
And now he wants to go.
Happy New Year!
Oh, the red is reflecting right there above the doll, and I was like, hello, everyone. Another year of us.
You're welcome.
We made it through last year.
Barely.
Well, we're not even done with this year. Technically, it is December 21st, 22nd.
First day of winter.
It's the 21st. It is the winter solstice. It is the shortest day of the year. I hope this year is good to us. Because last year
Please.
was not. There were a lot of good times last year, but there were also a lot of bad times. But here's to adventuring, hunting ghosts.
We've got big plans.
Yeah, if we don't get canceled on again.
We're trying to have big plans.
So this video is the most haunted places in Savannah. We did a video a couple months ago of most haunted cemeteries in Savannah, Georgia, or just Georgia, but a lot of them took place. They were in Savannah. So I was like, you know what? Let's just like nosedive into Savannah because it is one of the country's most haunted cities.
Yeah, that's why I feel like when I hear about haunted places, like you get like Gettysburg is always a big one that you hear about. I feel like Savannah, Georgia is up there. New Orleans,
because of the voodoo.
Yep. But I feel like Savannah is always like mentioned in with all of the haunted places.
The reasoning that Savannah is such a haunted city is because of the Native American burial grounds, yellow fever epidemics, forgotten cemeteries, violent wars, and hurricane disasters.
Yeah, hurricane's probably a big one for those southern states.
I know that like hurricanes don't always ravage like they do like Florida and Louisiana, stuff like that, but it can still hit hard. Like the flooding is so bad.
Like, if you think about it, up here, like we live in Illinois, we still get like the back end, like the storm part.
Remember when we got
obviously,
Katrina and everything flooded?
Yeah, we're not at all close to being close to any ocean at all. But even the hurricanes coming through like the southern states, we will get bad storms up here.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine being like down at the southern border.
Sometimes when the hurricanes come up, it mixes with like the air here because it's always cooler air, and it causes tornadoes. And I'm scared of tornadoes.
No, we're a tornado kind of place.
Like every time, so we have a whistle that goes off the first Tuesday of the month, and it's like their tornado sirens, the civil defense sirens. And I always text her, I'm like, not a tornado. We're okay.
Because when that goes off, it's different because we get fire calls here. Like we have a fire department, and every time we get a fire call, the whistle goes off. But when they test the whistles, there are different poles all over town that also go off. So it's not just the one firehouse whistle going off, it's everywhere. So that it makes you think that there's a tornado.
And they're so ominous too. I hate it.
It's creepy.
A lot of these cemeteries have been just forgotten about. Like super old cemeteries, like the headstones break off, or they literally just don't care, and they will build buildings on top of these cemeteries.
How could you not think that? For one thing, that's so disrespectful.
It really is.
But then on top of that, how could you not think that's a terrible idea?
And especially if they were Native American burial grounds. I mean, in the case of like no grave markers or anything, and you literally did not know, like that would be more understandable. But I feel like they were literally just digging bodies up, and they're like, let's put a building here.
Yeah, if you're putting a
People
building,
do that.
You have to put a foundation. So I feel like there's no way you don't know that there's.
And you may find out about this in this video. Disclaimer, we have not sat down to film a video in so long.
Oh my god.
So our reading may be astronomically bad. I could not get a single sentence out properly on the way to my house, and it's only a 3-block drive.
She was trying real hard. Hey, the bloopers.
The Hamilton Turner Inn was built by J.D. Hall in 1873 for for Mr. Samuel Pugh Hamilton, known as the Lord of Lafayette Square. He would become the mayor of Savannah and Grand Master of the Knights Templar. He would entertain lavishly with his wife Sarah. They wanted a house that would be perfect for every need they had. The mansion consisted of 17 rooms and is located on Lafayette Square in the historic district of downtown Savannah. It was the very first house to have electricity. A legend says people would gather outside to see the lights turn on and to see if the house would explode. The house never did explode. Instead, it was one of the only homes to survive the Savannah Fire of 1898 due to the tin roof that was resistant to the hot embers. Hamilton was a naval officer during the Civil War and was paid very well for his service. He then married Sarah Virginia Stillings in 1866. They had 6 children, 4 together and 2 boys from Sarah's previous marriage to William Franklin Hamilton, as in Samuel's brother.
Oh, no.
William had died from typhoid fever around 1862. When she married his brother-in-law, the brother had already been dead for a while, like years. And so I feel like it was more of keeping royalty or whatever, like keeping it in, not keeping it in the family because there's no incest, but Samuel loved art and collected valuable pieces from all over the world. He turned the mansion into a private art museum. To protect his collection, he hired an armed guard and posted him on the roof. One morning, the guard didn't come down from the roof. When somebody went to check on him, he was found lying in a pool of blood. He had been shot in the back of the head. His murderer was never found and the crime went unsolved. After the incident, nobody was willing to guard the mansion, so Hamilton took it upon himself to be the guard. Several months into the guarding, he got sick and died in 1899. Some believe the roof is cursed. To this day, some will see a ghostly figure on the roof smoking a cigar. Is it Hamilton standing guard, watching over his home? Or is the guard who was murdered looking for his killer still? The home remained in the Hamilton family until it was sold to Dr. Francis Turner in 1915. The family moved in and the doctor used the basement for his work. They lived there until 1926. The house was then opened up as a boarding house. 2 years later, it became the home of the Marine Hospital nurses. In 1940, the Turner family moved back into the house and the doctor returned to his work in the basement. It was rumored that Dr. Turner performed autopsies in the basement. The Turners were also known for their fancy parties. During the parties, the kids were forced to stay upstairs. To entertain themselves, they would play with the billiards table. One night, they accidentally rolled billiard balls down the stairs so they could catch a glimpse of the party. One of the girls got too close to the top step and fell down the stairs to her death. It is said once night falls, her ghost will roll billiard balls throughout the inn. In 1965, the mansion was sold to the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist. The plan was to tear the mansion down to either build a playground or parking lot. The Savannah Historic Foundation stepped in and prohibited it. From the 1970s to the late 1990s, several owners resided in the home, which the neighbors weren't fond of. There were wild parties and scandals. In 1997, Charlie and Sue Strickland bought the house and converted it to the Hamilton Turner Inn. Rob and Jane Sales took over the restoration in 2003, then sold it to the current owners, Gay and Jim Dunlop. One ghostly encounter goes like this. Almost 6 years ago, I spent a night at the Hamilton Turner Inn. I wasn't there looking for ghosts. I simply wanted to stay there. I heard the accommodations were amazing, and I wanted to treat myself for the night. At about 2 a.m., I was awoken by the sounds of footsteps walking past my bed. They were very clear and unmistakable. It sounded like someone was walking right towards me, laying in bed. It can be very unnerving to experience this. The room was very dark and I couldn't tell if it was an actual person or something else. I laid in bed for a few seconds and the footsteps stopped. I asked, "Is there anyone here?" I realized nobody was in the room with me. I didn't get a response, and nothing else happened for the rest of the evening. Some visitors claim to see full-bodied apparitions, hear children giggling, and the sound of billiard balls clacking when nobody is playing. A few have seen a Civil War soldier walking the hallways at night, knocking on guest doors, and believe he is sticking around because the inn was built atop his grave. One account is from a man who spent the night at the mansion while it was vacant in the 1960s. He was a broke aircraft mechanic at the time and wandered to Savannah to find a place to sleep. He entered the abandoned mansion to save money. He found a spot on the 3rd floor. As he started to fall asleep, he began to hear the noises. At first, he thought the creaking and thumping was just the house making settling noises. Then, he started hearing noises on the lower floors that started to make its way closer to him. He described it as someone trying to slowly and quietly get up the stairs. With the inn's rich history and many inhabitants, it's no surprise there are some hauntings.
This location is known to be one of the most haunted places in all of Savannah. Some believe the ghost stories that surround this building are some of the best in the community. We would be crazy not to have this on the list. The building was first erected in 1821 and served as a hotel. The owner, Eleazar Early, and his wife commissioned it and was made to be the City Hotel, a haven for the rich and famous. In 1864, the City Hotel reluctantly closed its doors. It was a little before General Sherman took Savannah during the Civil War. After the war, the City Hotel never reopened. Many times the building was used as a hospital during the many yellow fever epidemics. Hundreds of people, mostly children, died on the upper floors of the building during the outbreaks. The building was then passed along from business to business, then sat empty for 20 years. Then the Moon River Brewing Company decided to purchase the property. This building has had some violent history though. In 1832, a doctor named Philip Minus shot a drunk man, James Stark, inside the hotel. James was a known troublemaker and a drunk. He seemed to have a reputation for insulting people and was hated by many in Savannah. Dr. Minus insisted that he saw Stark going for his gun first. He was quickly acquitted of the crime, mainly due to everyone hating Stark, and well, he was Savannah's doctor and they needed him. Another act of violence occurred in 1860. The Civil War had not yet started, but there was a clear hatred for Yankees in Georgia. A Yankee named James Sinclair came into town and stayed at the City Hotel. Town residents were livid at the fact that he was even near them. They tried to peer pressure him into leaving on his own, but he refused. This caused the residents to get so angry that they formed a mob in the streets. Okay, crazy. Calm down. They marched through the city and into the hotel. Sinclair was dragged out into the street and stripped and beaten. He lived through the incident, but some think this violent experience has caused his spirit to come back and haunt where the tragedy happened. It is said there is some sort of paranormal activity on every floor of the brewery. The most famous ghost of the brewing company can be found in the basement and goes by the name Toby. He is seen wandering around down there so often that the staff decided to give him a name. The basement is said to be the most active location in the entire building. Toby is said to brush up against guests playing in the billiards room, or sometimes he gets so frustrated he pushes them. Many other experiences in the basement include cold spots, bottles falling or being thrown, and the feeling of being touched when nobody is around. Going up to the main floor, you'll find more strange occurrences. This is where Stark was shot by the doctor. Reports are unclear where exactly the shooting took place, but all agree it was on the main floor. Many believe Stark is the reason that bottles of liquor get thrown. Some also believe he is responsible for some of the more violent reports like grabbing, hitting, and pushing. The dining room is also on this floor, and people say they have felt someone touching them while they are eating. Several women have said that while in the bathroom, they got locked in a stall. I'm crawling out from underneath the stall.
If that ever happens to me, like...
The top 2 floors have a full-bodied apparition who is called the Woman in White. She has been seen several times on the 3rd floor by many. Sometimes she is referred to as Mrs. Johnson. The 3rd floor is also where many died from yellow fever. People aren't too surprised when they hear children giggling, talking, and playing in the halls. During the 1900s, construction was done on the 3rd floor. The wife of the foreman was pushed down the stairs by an unseen force. She fell all the way down the staircase. Several others have reported being shoved and pulled on while walking the stairs, especially around the 3rd floor. The top floor is said to have a much darker energy that the other floors don't have. This could be because this was where the yellow fever patients were housed. Yet there aren't too many experiences up here. It is only really known for its terrible energy. This building, like the last, is filled with history, death, and tragedy, but is still beautiful. This building, sitting on President Street in the Historic District, is known as the 1790. Many haunted tours stop at this building. It is actually 3 buildings. The first 2 were constructed between 1821 and 1823. The third part, the eastern part, was built in 1888. The 1790 is one of Savannah's oldest restaurants and inns. All of the buildings are said to house the unexplained. It is said there are at least 3 ghosts who inhabit the inn. The most well-known ghost is the ghost of Anna. She has been seen in room 204 on the top floor of the inn. She enjoys messing with people and their things. Guests who stay in this room commonly report having their belongings messed with, moved, or they even come up missing. It is also said you can feel the presence of Anna in the room. She is a friendly spirit, but wants people to know that she's there. Sheets have been tugged, and sometimes you can hear the sobs of a woman crying from the corners of the room after the lights get turned off. The question is, who is Anna? The story goes like this. There was a woman living in the building that makes up the east part of the property. The story varies, but the ending is always the same. Some say she was suffering from the loss of a loved one. Others say she was the bride of an arranged marriage who fell in love with a sailor. Overcome with grief or sadness, she flung herself over the railing of the second-floor balcony. Her body smashed into the brick courtyard below, ending her life, just as the sails of his ship left heading down the Savannah River to the sea. One legend says she was pushed from the window by her angry husband-to-be, who had paid for her passage to Savannah. There's a boy named Thaddeus that is sometimes seen on the ground floor of the restaurant and bar. He likes to leave shiny pennies laying around on the tables, the bar, and desk. He is also a friendly spirit. Some people encounter him by feeling a warm, comforting, unexplainable presence. Another spirit that has been encountered enjoys being in the kitchen. This energy is much more sinister than upstairs. The ghost that haunts the kitchen doesn't really seem to like women being in there. It's an anti-misogyny ghost. Pots have been thrown, people have been pushed and touched, and spice jars will be thrown around. Staff members who work late at night have claimed to have unnerving things happen to them around the kitchen and bar area. While alone, they will hear the sounds of somebody moving around in the kitchen, banging pots and pans together. Many of the staff believe this is the ghost of a servant who used to serve the family who lived in the house. It was believed she was a voodoo practitioner. If that is true, some believe the power of voodoo is helping to fuel the hauntings in the kitchen.
This last place on our list is different from the other 3. The difference is that this is a house, a private residence. To the eye, it looks like a normal house, but looking deeper, it is quite sinister. Some locals consider it one of the most haunted residences in Savannah. It is the location for the city's only religious exorcism ever. Did it work? Keep watching. The elegant Hampton Lillibridge house, located in the historical district, has been plagued with bad luck. Lots of suffering and death. Built in 1796 for Hampton Lillibridge, who was originally from Rhode Island, the house was designed from that of a New England origin. After Lillibridge died, his widow sold the house. The new owner then converted it into a boarding house. During this time, a troubled sailor was ashore for a short break and committed suicide by hanging himself in one of the guest rooms. This ruined the reputation of the boarding house and marked the property as a place of ill repute. Eventually, the boarding house had to close its doors. After that, for many years, nobody lived there. In 1963, Jim Williams, an esteemed antique dealer and architectural restorationist, bought the house. He was the inspiration for the main character in John Berent's book, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. Williams took great pride and enjoyment in restoring the Lillibridge house to what it once was. A story recounts that while in the process of moving the house on blocks and wheels, just a few blocks down the road, part of the roof collapsed. It crushed one of Williams' workers and he later died from the injuries. The problems didn't stop after the house was moved. More bad luck started happening practically immediately, as if the house had come to life. The construction crew would feel chills and tingles on the backs of their necks. They would hear the sound of furniture being moved around. Laughter and voices would be heard when nobody else is around. Tools and equipment would be moved around or just disappear completely. Many members of the crew couldn't tolerate it anymore and would quit. Talk started, and soon a local news crew picked up on the paranormal activity and went to the house late one night. Walking into the house, they were greeted by a piece of construction material flying at them. One worker heard a loud noise and went upstairs to investigate. He didn't think anyone was up there. When the man didn't return for a while, his co-workers got concerned, and 2 of them went upstairs and found him. By following the sound of his terrified whimpers, he was laying face down on the wooden floor, scraping at the bare wood with his nails. After being comforted and calmed down, the man said he walked into the room, looking for the noise, and instantly felt as though he'd been thrown into ice-cold water and was losing control over his body. It was almost as if his body was possessed. He dropped to the floor, trying to stop the unexplained force from dragging him towards an open chimney shaft that dropped 3 stories. The fall would have killed him. While telling his co-workers, he casually mentioned an exorcism. As he said exorcism, a loud female scream echoed through the room. Apparitions would also be seen. One was described as a tall man dressed in black. He would watch from the 3rd floor window, wearing a black suit and a light-colored tie. Some have reported seeing a middle-aged man with gray hair wearing a silver robe. Neighbors next door would complain that it sounded like a party was going on, hearing singing and dancing when the house was completely empty. Lights have been seen flickering on and off. A woman who lived locally told Williams that she had recently been feeling a great fear of a male presence that she felt in the house. Williams was not a big believer in the supernatural and didn't believe the house was haunted. He did say that the renovations unearthed a mysterious crypt beneath the house's new location. The crew had to dig up the house's foundation to seat the upper stories. They unearthed an ancient crypt below the basement. It most likely dates from a pre-colonial period. Some believe it is of Native American origin. The walls were built with rough lime and crushed oyster shells. It isn't well known what happened to the crypt after. There was no mention of moving it or reinterment. Some say it was buried under the house. Even after hearing all the tales of ghostly activity in the house, Williams moved in. He was immediately welcomed by the spirits. He was awoken by footsteps several times, saying they sounded like glass being crushed. He also saw a shadow figure who approached him, then disappeared. Williams was intrigued and probably a little annoyed. He attempted to follow one of the spirits. He wrote that he chased it down a hallway until a door slammed in his face. When he tried to open the door, it was locked. All of this activity made his life pretty hard for him, and it made it very difficult for him to sleep. So he went to see an Episcopal bishop from a nearby church. On December 7th, 1963, Reverend Albert Rhett Stewart performed an exorcism in the house and a ceremonial blessing of his home. The house was then quiet with no activity happening for less than a week. Then the activity picked right back up. Williams then brought in investigators and kept trying to rid the house of its ghosts. None of it was successful. Eventually, Williams sold the house and now others live there. It is a private residence and tours are not available, but the spirits are still lurking on the inside.
Dun, dun, dun.
If you liked this video, give it a big thumbs up. Give us a comment. Let us know if you've ever been to Savannah, Georgia. Let us know if you live in Savannah, Georgia. Let us know if you've had any experiences in Savannah, Georgia. We also have a most haunted cemeteries video of Georgia or Savannah, Georgia. I literally don't know. But if you have any other haunted places in Savannah or Georgia or anywhere that you want us to cover, let us know and we will do it. This video probably only should have taken us like 30 minutes to film, and it's been over an hour. And we'll see you next week, whenever that is. Okay, bye!